what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a special video. For this one, it's going to be a look at video games in 2019. The good, the controversial, a mix, and the bad. And if you're interested in my look at movies back in 2019, I'll have a link in the description, and you can check that out. 2019 certainly was a good year for a lot of games. There were certainly several video game companies that did very well and got a good reputation in 2019. Nintendo certainly had with some of their releases as well. FromSoft and even Square Enix had some pretty good releases for 2019 though. But also at the same time, we had some controversy, including one game, Death Stranding, that was, to some view, to many, overhyped, to basically some of the appearance of certain people that led to certain controversies and all that, to basically a CEO, Randy Pitchford, with the whole situation in Borderlands 3, and then of course there's the whole situation with, Stadia and Fallout 76 and so forth. But we'll get started with the first one, and we'll start off with basically the good. So, what was good this year for several things in video games in 2019? Well, it certainly was a good year for Respawn, the company that made the game Titanfall 2, the game that EA at least pretty much threw it under the bus by having it sandwiched between Battlefield 1 and the Call of Duty game that year, and well, that didn't turn out as well. And I personally think EA should be grateful for Respawn because 2019 was good with them for two reasons. Apex Legends, which has done very well for them though, maybe not on Fortnite level, but seems to be still doing well, and of course Jedi Fallen Order, a linear single-player Star Wars game, the type of game that EA in the past dismissive as saying people don't play those games anymore, and that that has kind of a complete reversal though, and they should be grateful of Respawn. In fact, many people believe the head of the CEO, who right now is running not only Respawn, but I think a certain EA DICE in Los Angeles though, how he should probably be running EA, because apparently Respawn at least put EA in a better position in 2019 than they have in the past. Now, granted, not everything EA did was 100% perfect. We're going to get to Anthem in a minute, and of course their E3 showing wasn't exactly great. So, in other words, they should be very grateful for Respawn. The other one is Project CD Red, which certainly had a good 2019 indeed. First, of course, is obviously the showing of basically Cyberpunk 2077, which is a game that a lot of people, including myself, are looking forward to when that comes out this year. Though we still don't know about at least the multiplayer part. We still have to know whether that is what approach they're going to take in terms of regarding monetization and all that stuff. But as far as the single player go, I think a lot of people are looking forward to that, including the fact that we now know that Keanu Reeves, who has really seen a resurgence in lately, especially with the success of the John Wick movies, going to be in Cyberpunk 2077 though. We still don't know what kind of a big role he's going to play in that game, but I am very curious to see his character and all when the game finally does come out. And of course, the other one as well is the game that no one thought would ever come to the Nintendo Switch. No one never knew this was coming to it, and that is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. A port that we thought was impossible, and when we saw that was shown at E3 2019 during Nintendo's E3 Direct, I think a lot of us were just shocked to see the rumors and all that stuff. And it certainly is a good game on the Nintendo Switch, even if it's not the best looking version of the game, it's still amazing this game is even on the Nintendo Switch. And supposedly CD Projekt Red was certainly happy with the sales of Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch. Not to mention, recently The Witcher has premiered on Netflix, which seems to be doing well, and has certainly saw a spike in people's interest in the Witcher series. So CD Projekt Red, I have to say, as far as 2019 goes, was definitely good for them. The next one, of course, is The Outer Worlds. Now, to me, The Outer Worlds is definitely one of my favorite games of 2019, right next to other games like Dragon Quest XI and Astro Chains and so forth. And it's definitely, for many people, it feels like the Fallout game that Bethesda is not giving us anymore, or at least not right now, and all that stuff. So it was very nice to see the game certainly did very well, at least in terms of sales. Not to mention, we know that it's coming to the Nintendo Switch. But even so, it is definitely a fun game indeed, and it's definitely a recommendation to pick up, regardless if your main system of choice is either a PC, a PS4, or an Xbox One, or even if you're waiting for the Nintendo Switch. Yeah, I personally believe The Outer Worlds should definitely be on your list of games to play, though. So kudos to Obsidian, though. I wish them best of luck being bought off by Microsoft. Hopefully that doesn't diminish, the quality of the games they put out and everything like that. But The Outer Worlds was definitely a welcome fresh of breath there, and definitely a recommendation. We also saw Nintendo had a good 2019, obviously with the Switch doing very well and all that stuff. How that will play out when the PS5 and Xbox One Series X comes, that remains to be seen. But in the meantime, they certainly did had some great, had a really good 2019. New Super Mario Bros. U definitely did very well. A port of a launch title for the Wii U back, I believe, in 2012. Certainly did very well, including in the UK and all. And it's pretty much given the fact that Nintendo will probably be looking at bringing more Wii U ports over to the Nintendo Switch, much like they did with Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker and Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Luigi's Mansion, a series that often was viewed as being a niche title, did very well for the Nintendo Switch. The third entry into it, which was, definitely fun. You definitely get a Ghostbuster vibe out of it and so forth. And hopefully this will open the door to not only doing a Luigi's Mansion 4, but maybe porting over the first and second one to the Nintendo Switch using some of the quality of life or mechanics from Luigi's Mansion 3. And of course, we cannot forget also Fire Emblem Three Houses, a series that many thought, that Nintendo thought was pretty much on its way out and all that stuff, but saw a resurgence when Awakening came out, and with Fire Emblem Fate and Echoes, and now Three Houses definitely did very well for Nintendo, not only sales-wise, but it won, I think, several awards. It won Best Strategy Game at the Game Awards for 2019, and also Player's Choice Award. So definitely very good for Fire Emblem indeed. Obviously, with the success that series has been getting lately, it's certainly going to be a staple for Nintendo. Hopefully this will give them an opportunity to maybe dig in and bring it back, the War series or Advance Wars, and maybe or Battalion Wars, and give that one another go, especially on the Nintendo Switch. It was also let's also not forget that Dragon Quest XI apparently did very well, particularly thanks to the Switch version. They've now shipped 5.5 million units. So certainly a lot of people are enjoying the Dragon Quest XI's game. Here's to hoping to see other entries as well. And we know Dragon Quest 12 is happening, whether it comes to the Switch or not. That remains to be seen. For me, my fingers are crossed, and hopefully they do bring that to the Nintendo Switch. And of course, last but not least, Sekiro Shadow Die Twice was from FromSoft, did very well for them. Basically, the game was Game of the Year for a lot of people, and it definitely won a lot of awards. Make no mistake, being that it's made by the same folks who did Demon Souls and Dark Souls, it does have that difficulty spike that may or may not turn some people off, but fans of those type of games and all would definitely like Sekiro Shadow Die Twice. So kudos to FromSoft. I'm glad that their game did very well and won Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 2. And this one has to do with the controversial and the mix. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video of a look back at video games in 2019. So we'll get started with part 2, which is the controversial and the mix. And 2019 certainly had their share of controversies, though. We'll start with the first one, and that has to do with Nintendo. Now, while Nintendo certainly had a good 2019, the Switch did well, Luigi Mansion 3 and Fire Emblem Three Houses were a success, along with New Super Mario Bros. U and other games. That doesn't mean that they were immune to any kind of controversies. Mainly the two big ones, or mostly one being the biggest one of them all, and the other one certainly getting people's attention, was both Pokemon and Tokyo Mirage Session. With Tokyo Mirage Session, the controversy of that one started to come out when it was later, when people learned that that version of the game will be focused on the Western Wii U version and not the uncensored Japanese version. That announcement did not exactly sit very well with everyone, though, particularly those in Japan. This led to a point where Nintendo Japan had to offer an apology to the situation, failing to tell people what the version that they were basing this on, and was willing to offer a refund for those who had pre-ordered the game, I think at certain places on the website, though. This also led to a situation where Tokyo Mirage Session, the Wii U version in Japan, became the #1 bestseller in Amazon Japan, which clearly showed that both Aulx and Nintendo kind of misread the situation, to be exact. Now, whether or not this will have any kind of impact when the game comes out this month or so forth, that remains to be seen. We'll have to wait and see if this controversy had any impact on it at all, or had virtually no impact. But in either case, it was, and I kind of have to agree, it was pretty much a dumb decision on Nintendo and Aulx's part, though. Yes, it's their game, but I don't exactly agree with their approach to go with the Western censored version and not go with the uncensored version, to be exact. But of course, the biggest one has to do with Pokemon, and Pokemon Sword and Shield certainly got a lot of people's attention when Game Freak made some announcements on some of the decisions it made. There were some decisions of them reusing old assets, to the visuals weren't that good, to the whole issue with the Pokédex, where not all the Pokemons are going to be in there, and this led to some people being pretty upset about this, though. Although, despite the controversy, it doesn't look like it did much to stop the game from doing very well. Pokemon Sword and Shield sold very well and all that stuff, but it is clear that Sword and Shield is certainly controversial to some people, especially the way Game Freak handled themselves and all that stuff. Although there were some folks that took it a little too far, whether this was trolling or not, where some people went out of the way to make false allegations of sexual harassment to one of the employees at Game Freak and all that stuff. So it kind of went a little overboard, but there's no doubt that Pokemon Sword and Shield, while successful, it's controversial to some Pokemon fans out there. We also had the controversy with Activision and Blizzard, and while some of it could have been just the fact that Bungie and Activision Blizzard split and Bungie took Destiny 2 with them, the biggest one has to do with the whole Blitzchung situation, the Hearthstone player, where he made a comment in terms of saying free Hong Kong this has to do with the whole protest going on in Hong Kong over a certain bill and so forth, which, well, didn't sit well with Activision Blizzard, and basically suspended this Hearthstone player and took away his prize money and all that stuff. This caused a major backlash from a lot of people, and this blew open a Pandora box, in my view, that could not be stopped. And it wasn't Activision Blizzard also, and the NBA got themselves into hot waters over this as well, because this gave the impression, though, that Activision Blizzard was bowing to the will of the Chinese government and all that stuff, and many pointed to Tencent, which has a certain percentage in Activision Blizzard. They also had one in Epic Games as well, although the head of Epic Games has spoken out in favor of Blitzchung and so forth, and you can see why some people are a little iffy about about Tencent dipping their hands with platinum and all that stuff. Well, not only did the controversy blow, or not only the controversy didn't sit well with gamers, it also got the attention of lawmakers, from Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, a Republican, to Congresswoman Alexandra Cortez, a Democrat, that both also voiced their opposition against what Activision Blizzard did. And it even also had an impact on the launch of Overwatch for the Nintendo Switch, where originally there was supposed to be a special event at the Nintendo World Store in New York, but Activision Blizzard, just days before that event happened, and Nintendo had to send out a tweet, canceled that. They didn't give any reason, although many cited the Hong Kong protest situation as well. Eventually, Activision, based on the pressure that was given to them, Activision and Blizzard returned some of the award money to to the Hearthstone player Blitzchung, and addressed the problem at BlizzCon, which, well, let's just say it didn't really end the controversy in any way. But that whole situation, all that stuff, has really blown wide open in terms of basically businesses, companies doing business in China or want to bring their stuff to China, because now it gives the impression of, are you willing to turn the other cheeks of the human rights abuse in China and so forth? So it really blew that whole situation over on all that stuff. So yeah, not a great year for Activision Blizzard, at least in terms of a political firestorm that they it really was a no-win situation for them at all. And the way they handled it really was bad, just very bad. The other controversy we also had was the release of Death Stranding. Now, this game has sort of been marred in controversies, though. The game has sort of gotten mixed reviews from a lot of people. Some people actually enjoy it, others don't. I played a little bit of it. I have to get in a little bit more, and I could see where some people may like the gameplay and some people may not like the gameplay at all. But some of the controversy that has emerged from it, ranging from one of the first people who worked at Mix.to is in the game, and supposedly he gave it a perfect score, giving the impression of bias and the whole ethical in game journalism issue. Plus, the host of the Game Awards was also in the game, which raised the question about whether there's bias in favor of game sweeping the Game Awards and all that stuff, although he came out and denied that, since Death Stranding was certainly up for several nominations, and they did win some awards, but they didn't win Game of the Year or anything like that. But there's no doubt about it that 2019 for Death Stranding was certainly controversial, and there's no doubt the game has garnered a mixed response to some gamers. Like I said, some like it, and some don't. And last but not least, the third controversy and mix has to do with Borderlands 3, particularly Gearbox's CEO Randy Pitchford, though. Now, obviously, I consider myself a Borderlands fan. I like the series. I like the whole art style, story, and the whole looter shooter and RPGs with first-person shooter. And I have to say, for me, Borderlands 3 is basically more Borderlands. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but that doesn't mean the game is for everybody. But that being said, the road to its eventual release did not exactly sit very well, especially with the way Randy Pitchford started in his behavior, though. A lot of it ranged from the Epic Store exclusivity, which not everyone seemed to enjoy. There was a whole issue with the microtransactions, which Randy Pitchford didn't exactly explain this very well. There was the issue of him not hiring one of the employees who did the voice of the Claptrap and all that stuff. There's issues of confrontations he had with several of the with former employees. There's also issue of basically a USB drive that has content in there that is considered to be extremely inappropriate, that was found at a medieval times. And so there was a whole... Oh yeah, he also got in trouble with Twitter for supposedly posting with some picture with a cat getting pinched in the tail or something like that. I don't know the whole story, but in either case, this was marred in controversy. Yet, despite the controversy, it didn't stop Borderlands 3 from being very successful, but it certainly didn't it certainly didn't help Gearbox's reputation and all. I mean, this company's reputation is still kind of negative, especially after the whole Alien Colonial Marine debacle, a game that Randy Pitchford continues to defend despite being called out for what he did with that game and so forth. So I just wondering how long until his luck eventually runs out and all that stuff, because one of these days, one of those controversies could really damage the company really bad at some point, and that not going to be good for Gearbox and all that stuff. So yes, Borderlands 3 was a success, but there's no denying the fact that it certainly found itself in a lot of controversies leading up to its release. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 3, and this one will be the bad, or the worst, like what was bad in 2019 in gaming. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our third and final part of this video of a look back at video games in 2019. So now we're going to get to the third and final part, which is the bad, the worst of the worst, or at least what I thought was the worst of the worst for 2019. And well, let's just say 2019 didn't exactly sit well with a lot of things out there. We'll start off first with the Game Awards of 2019, and well, the response to it has been kind of mixed. There wasn't any real surprises or anything like that, and some people felt like the award ceremony was basically more just a product placement, or like, you know, just promoting products and all that stuff. So I will say that's sort of the tail end of being bad for the Game Awards, for at least the bad part though. So I mean, I didn't see it, so I didn't really know I didn't really watch the whole thing, but obviously it probably, what for many though, it wasn't really that great and all that stuff. And while that certainly is the tail end of it in terms of being the worst part of 2019, it's nowhere compared to the other three, which was just awful. And we're going to go with the next one we're going to be talking about is Google Stadia. That's right, Google's attempt to launch their own console via a streaming service similar to how stuff like Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Amazon Instant Video. And well, the response to the response to Stadia has been not great. First, we had some people who tried it out, and while some reviews have been somewhat kind, like kind has saying it works, others, however, have been reports of lags and all that stuff. And to top it all off, there have been indications that Google may have lied in terms of it being 4K and all that stuff, where it's not always 4K in some situation. And, well, that hasn't sat very well. And to make even the situation worse, though, it is reported that Google Stadia has not exactly been a financial success, at least according to Kotaku writer Jason Schreier, who's heard several reports from several people he's heard from, saying that it has become a huge flop despite the pre-orders and all that stuff. And supposedly he doesn't believe that Stadia is going away, but something's going to have to change. And yeah, given the whole situation with Google Stadia, Google needs to figure something out soon, because we got Amazon coming out with their own gaming streaming service. Whether that becomes a success or not, who knows, depending on what Amazon does. And then, of course, we have Microsoft with their upcoming Project xCloud, along with their Xbox Game Pass, which, even though it's in a beta at this moment, based on the response that we're hearing so far, it seems to be getting a much more positive response than what Stadia is doing. So Google better figure out something soon if they really want Stadia to become a success. Otherwise, many people believe that Google will abandon it, like they have abandoned a lot of things like Google Plus and so forth. So Google better figure something out real soon to earn consumers' trust back and to tell them that this is worth getting. Google Stadia is worth getting, so they better figure something out. The other big, unfortunate worst for 2019 was, of course, Anthem and, of course, Bioware. Anthem, boy, that kind of crashed and burned, though. The game launched to a state that not a lot of people liked. Some people pointing some bugs and glitches, others pointing at being unplayable. There were situations where the game crashed people's PS4. There's other people claiming that that the loot system's broken, to basically the game having like little to no content, and not to mention there were reports about how Bioware had trouble with the Frostbite engine to begin with, to even the infamous Kotaku report about the crunch time and all that stuff. And that really became a big issue about how some developers left, some had to go into rehab, some people, and all that stuff. So it really did a lot of damage, especially did a lot of damage to Bioware big time. And many people believe that Bioware is going to be on the chopping block, especially with the upcoming, Dragon Age 4 and all that stuff. But if there is at least one glimmer of hope for at least for Anthem, it appears as though is that Bioware is apparently going to do a full-on, at least Anthem 2.0, or at least a soft reboot of it. Basically, they canceled whatever roadmap they had originally planned, and they're basically going to look at Anthem, tear it down, and try to fix what they can. Now, could they succeed on that? It's a possibility. No Man's Sky went through that, and that is doing very well. Final Fantasy XIV did that, and that's doing very well. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but Bioware, and especially EA, who published the game, Bioware is really going to have to work hard to convince consumers to give Anthem another try, because the way they handled it in 2019 was just terrible and all that stuff. And as I said earlier, EA should be grateful for Respawn, which, had it not been for Respawn basically putting out Apex Legend and Jedi Fallen Order, I would have put EA in the bad category. They were probably the only saving grace for EA this year, at least in my view. But yeah, Anthem, really, they're going to have to figure out a way to get Anthem, convince people to come back to Anthem, though. And of course, last but not least, Fallout 76. Unfortunately, even though this game was released back in 2018, apparently it seemed it was just one controversy after another, and unfortunately, even though Anthem kind of stole the spotlight, Bethesda found a way to put themselves back on the spotlight. First, we've had issues of the game still being broken and buggy, although some are saying the game certainly is better, but still not worth playing at this time. There's issues of broken promises from the whole microtransaction issues, which they also ship, basically charge for bobby pins and so forth. Some of the biggest controversy had to do with the canvas bag, in which they shipped a nylon bag, and their claim was the canvas bag, they ran out of the materials, but yet there were claims that the canvas bag was handed out to influencers and so forth, and to the gaming press, which that also caused several backlashes as well. There was the issue of giving away only 500 items, which is basically $5, which that didn't sit very well. So they had to basically promise a canvas bag, although there are several reports that some people's credit card information got out, to a lawsuit from a law firm that was going to talk about people who may have been ripped off about this, to having to refund people in Australia because they misled and lied about Fallout 76, to even the Fallout First subscription, which still didn't fix a lot of the problem. It was still broken and buggy and all that stuff. And Bethesda had the audacity to have a straight face to talk about how a great year it was with Fallout 76. I'm sorry, I can see why a lot of people refer to the Outer Worlds as basically the Fallout game Bethesda does not want to do. And unfortunately, Bethesda's not going into 2020 in a strong suit, though. This game didn't do very well, and didn't earn a great reputation. Wolfenstein Youngblood didn't, although I didn't technically hate the game as much as a lot of people did, but I could see why it wasn't a hit for a lot of people. And going into 2019, I'm worried about games like Doom Eternal, especially considering now that's been delayed from the Nintendo Switch, and the concerns of what they could put in that game, perhaps the nightmarish microtransactions if they decide to put that in, to even Starfield, with rumors going around that that game may have been canceled and all that stuff, although we don't know for certain, but they're going to have to do something. Bethesda's really going to have to convince people about have a good 2020 this year, though, and they're going to have to figure out something with Fallout 76, because they could put on a straight face all they want to, but let's be honest, Fallout 76 has been a train wreck ever since it was launched. And it is certainly, and I do agree, it has certainly hurted Bethesda's reputation big time. Okay, this concludes this look back at video games in 2019. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about video games in 2019? Were there any goods that you thought came out in 2019 in terms of video games, or any controversy or mix, or anything that was bad in any way? Do you think CD Projekt Red had a good year? Do you think The Outer Worlds definitely had a good year? Do you think Activision Blizzard had a controversial year? Do you think Bethesda with Fallout 76 had a bad year? Do you think any of the games I mentioned that are bad, do you think companies like Bioware, Google, and Bethesda could bounce back in any way? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!